Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case with another focused, interesting video, this time looking at the highway, the photos of the scene officially, the blood traces, and working out the meaning behind it, the captions, the chalk marks, going a little bit deeper than what I have done beforehand. In the past, I looked at the article in general. This time I'm focusing more in. And we're not just talking about the theme of blood and how it links to the cause of death, but more so the angling, the positioning, the distance from the body. Understanding, is the blood caused from the death, or could the blood be caused from being dropped off, disposed of, as in foul play? That's what's going to happen today. You'll see the photos. We'll do a discussion. I'll break it down. So be sure to stick around. We've got a full video today. Welcome to everyone that's watching this live premiere. Share your thoughts, opinions, and reactions in the live chat box, right-hand side of the screen. And as well, if you want to share your thoughts at the end of this video, whether you agree or disagree with my points, if you've got questions and you want to elaborate, feel free to drop a comment down below under the video. It helps spread awareness with my videos and the case overall. And if you are interested in recent coverage by me, top right corner of the screen up there, you'll notice an I symbol. Click on that, you get the drop down menu of the full playlist, the case, what I've covered, and previous videos too. And also, below in the comment section, there will be a pinned message by me with additional links if you do want to support this channel. Just want to say shout out to those that have supported the channel in recent time. For example, Cleo with the gifted memberships, very good to see. And there'll be another shout out later on in this video when it comes to looking at the comments section. With that all being said, some may be wondering what's going on with, this. Basically, you can interpret it one of two ways. Either one, we're getting down and serious focus today, or two, Warlight Ref is having a bit of a bad hair day, so this is needed. Other times I've used cowboy hats, and then other times I've just used whatever else. Sometimes I run out of helmets, I run out of hats, right? But anyway, to set the scene for today, focusing in on the highway, Noah Presgrove, looking at the photos from, which were originally posted on one of the Daily Mail articles, which also has captions underneath, so it makes it easier to learn and go along with. The good thing is about today is the photos are official and were taken. In terms of the time and the date, I'm not too sure about that. You'd expect it to be on the same day or pushing it the day afterwards. Got to take in mind that just dealing with Noah Presgrove's body, and when the ME actually got down, hours passed by. It went into the afternoon, didn't it? Whilst some of the Presgrove family members were waiting around. Obviously, that in itself, the lack of proactiveness there, could have somewhat impacted the autopsy report, right? And I think the link with liver mortars kicking on in because of the length of time it going on. The ME was supposed to be heading straight to the scene of the highway, but on the way down decided to take a detour to Lawton to do with some other case. Now, does that normally happen? If you're assigned to be somewhere and that's the next on the list, but instead you think, you know what, I'm closer to somewhere else, so I'll do another thing first and then I'll go on down afterwards. Is that exactly professional? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. But with that being said, the blood itself, just in general, people have focused on it a lot. And I have done some previous coverage as well to an extent in terms of the blood loss or the lack of it at the scene. Where did it end up? Is the rest elsewhere? I can understand all that questioning, and then the counterpoints and others suggesting that the blood was like within Noah. It was like leaking about elsewhere, internal. We have heard about internal bleeding by some of the injuries caused, but there was also supposedly blood coming out of the ears. If blood came out of the ears, well, is that blood next to Noah's body? If you're going to see Noah's body and it's like sideways, I can't remember if it was head pointing north or feet pointing north. Either way, you think by the side of the head, on both or either side, there would be a bit of blood. Is that really the case today? And now the reference about a tooth. Just one or more? Well, We'll get to that shortly. So whatever people think, blood loss, it being present or missing, must be elsewhere. In a normal hit and run, let's just put that out there first of all. A normal hit and run, what would the body normally look like as in blood loss? Would most of it be present, or could it be interpreted as there's not enough blood present, so it can't be a hit and run, but it really is? In other cases, what's it normally like? Let me know and then compare to this particular case. And that can apply to those that are really for the hit and run as what they expect. And in terms of the positioning, just another question I want to throw out there before we get onto the photos. People that strongly believe it's an accident or a hit and run, right? Where Noah was found on the hard shoulder, is that normally where a body would end up if it got hit or clipped by a moving vehicle or truck? It's only because there'll be other cases of hit and runs where if someone gets hit by a moving car, they'll roll over the bonnet, over the top and the back of the vehicle, and then land on the floor in the lane of traffic that was coming towards them. With other vehicles, maybe higher up, you're not going to roll over, but you're going to be knocked and pushed backwards so far. Depends on the force and the speed of the vehicle. If you used to get clipped, caught by the side, it could send you flying off diagonally. But in terms of all those different possibilities, how often are you going to get hit and then be lined up perfectly along the hard shoulder? It would make me think, if by some very small chance it's a hit and run, did the person get out and then reposition the body, move it off to the side and then drive on? I'm only thinking that the only stuff that could compare to an extent is some animals that get hit by vehicles, whether that applies to the US or more so in the UK from what I've seen myself. It could be a badger or a fox. It may get hit when crossing or just caught in the middle of the road. Sometimes they're squashed and other times not, but they are dragged to the side, whether that be the highway, whether it be council, whoever else in charge. Move a dead animal to the side so no more vehicles run over it. It makes sense. If it's like a bird or a squirrel, because it's smaller and it might already be squashed, then it's probably not going to be touched and it'll just be left there to decompose. But the bigger the living thing or once living thing in the middle of the road, somehow hit or pushed further back, if it's not already by the side, likely it will be eventually by someone dragging it to the side. Just like if there was a branch, a log that fell onto the road, it's going to be dragged to the side. So it's not obstructing, it's not getting in the way, it's not going to make contact with the tyres of a vehicle. If it's just a twig, you probably let it slide and drive over it, just like a dead small animal. So with the basis of Noah Presgrove, if Noah was hit, blood loss or not, would he have truly, naturally ended up perfectly on the side of the hard shoulder, or was he actually moved, repositioned? And that can apply to either not a hit and run, dead elsewhere, possibly murdered, then disposed of at the highway, put on the side of the hard shoulder. Why exactly? I mean, and I just want to put it out there because we might as well, whilst we're here, welcome to anyone else that's joining this live premiere. If Noah Presgrove was murdered elsewhere and people panicked and thought we'll dispose of him at the highway to stage a hit and run so it doesn't trace back to us, why would they put him on the hard shoulder? Why not dump him in the middle of the road in a certain position so it looks like he has been hit by a vehicle, he's been flung over or he's been pushed back and landed on the floor? And whether vehicles would see in the distance or not, Noah could end up being run over multiple times like a small squirrel being squashed if people weren't, eyes focused. Let's just put it that way. Did people put him on the side of the highway because they panicked? They wanted to stage it as a hit and run so it wouldn't trace back to them, but furthermore, they didn't want to desecrate Noah's body anymore by leaving him in the middle of the road so he would get squashed further. But if he was left in the middle of the road, would people be more likely to believe it's a hit and run? So That question can then be applied to people that believe it's murder, foul play, being disposed of at the highway. Do you feel that if Noah's body, under the same circumstances of injuries and whatnot, but if Noah was found in the middle of the road rather than the hard shoulder, would you still think it's a staged hit and run, or do you think it's more likely to be a hit and run? There will be some factors which people will play into and say, well, because of the blood, it's my deciding factor as to why I feel this is the cause of death. This is what's happened. And how do we get past that? Well, all we can do is look into it, and we might as well start it right now with some of the images. As you see on screen, this is the first image. You get the background too of the railroad tracks. First of all, let's just read the caption. Noah Presgrove's body was found between the two chalk lines, and teeth within the circles in the background is a memorial set. So that's what Noah Presgrove looks like, okay, in case you're wondering. And that's where he was, in between those chalk lines. Furthermore, what we're looking at on the ground is the road, more so over the white line, is the hard shoulder. Now, people from the US may not use that term, but it just basically means on the side of the road. Sometimes on a highway, motorway, you may pull up with the hazard lights on. Maybe you've got a flat tire. Maybe you've broken down. You need to pull up. That's what some people will do. Not all hard shoulders are big enough, and that can pose some risk towards other drivers and yourself if you are by the side. As for Noah Presgrove's body, there was no references about any other vehicles running over his body at the time. So it makes me wonder if Noah was lined up perfectly, just like how you see where the chalk marks are on the or near to the white line in parallel, kind of like horizontal. It's like too perfect, isn't it? But someone like Caden Pressey at 521 did say about Noah's body, Noah's arms and legs were sprawled out. Your body can be sprawled out if you are hit by a vehicle and then you go flying across and land on the floor, spread, twisted, depends what the injuries are as well. But your body can also be sprawled out, including your legs, if you've been picked up and chucked, whether that be chucked onto a bed, chucked onto a floor, dead or alive. Floppy arms, floppy legs. And I guess if you are dead, with the exception of more weight, body weight, dead weight, harder to move, it makes you think, on the basis that if Noah Presgrove was to be dropped off at the highway to stage a hit and run, how many people do you think it would have taken to do that? How many people would it have taken to pick Noah's body up, and would they have tossed him onto the floor? Would they have placed him down gently? What do you think? I think may have been dropped or tossed in order for legs and arms to be sprawled out and body to be twisted. Do you know, like when you get a mannequin and you might adjust the limbs? Would anyone have thought to have done that at the time? Oh yeah, let's make sure the neck is really twisted and make sure the arms are spread out so it looks like the positioning of how a body would make contact and fall onto the ground if it had been previously hit by a moving vehicle. Is that a possibility? It's like with, has someone broken into a house or did someone break out the house? You've got to look at the glass, the shards, the panes of glass. Did they break on the inside or on the outside? If it was to break on the inside, like fall inwards, likely the person was on the outside, hitting at the glass, or even if you maybe fired a shot. If you're on the inside of the house breaking out, the glass is more so going to fall outwards. Possibilities. Unless there's some obstructions along the way which causes the glass to fall in a certain direction, you can't get the idea. So can we apply that to the case here with how Noah ended up and what he looked like? But the other importance is the chalk circles. More than one circle, at least on this screen, there are two. And that's to do with where teeth were found. Not just a tooth, but teeth, more than one. And how they're spread out is obviously interesting, isn't it? Is that normal? If a body was to be dropped and placed by the side of the highway, would the teeth end up being spread out or not? And whilst you hold that thought in your mind, just to zoom in so you're familiar, in the background, you can see the memorial, the cross there. What I do want to say is, and I don't know if anyone sees it themselves, just in front of the white cross on the ground, there appears to be like a black object planted in. with like a solar panel light thing. Can anyone see that? I don't know if it still applies till this day. This is an older photo. Ever since, you got the cross there, and you might have a smaller cross nearby. It was said that Jack Newton created the memorial. Who was responsible for what? You got the main white cross there for Noah Presgrove as a memorial, but then you had a black cross or a smaller one nearby. Who put what there? Does anyone know? Because there was a theory at the time suggesting if Jack Newton made the memorial, the spot to bury things, could that tie in with burying any items or possessions? It is documented on my channel as just a theory, concept-based video. If you're interested, make sure to check it out. And that's pretty much it. We've seen some updated photos since of the area and the ground and the grass being cut down. One's done by Donna Bond, another by Justin Roy and his family, just to make sure it doesn't become overgrown, to make sure it's remembered and in sight, which is obviously a good thing to do. And anything else for details, if you were wondering, you might just wonder, what's this? What are these like ruts in the ground? Basically, they're on the side of the roadway in parallel to the white line going onto the hard shoulder. This is just to alert drivers who may be not fully there with it, which obviously doesn't sound too hopeful, or drivers that aren't quite paying attention, drifting, steering off course. As soon as you go over these ruts in the ground, it's going to make a bit of a vibration, a bump, a noise, and it will alert you to get back onto the road so you don't drift away. That's all it really is. But yeah, it's just interesting this, the circles. Now, we probably will see it from different angles, but how close can I really get? So supposedly that circle there on the right-hand side is where a tooth was found, supposedly. Interesting. Don't see any blood from here. And then the other circle, slightly bigger in size, with a bit of a black line or mark in the middle, which I don't know would be a blood stain or not. I mean, if teeth was to come out of the mouth, how exactly? Is it when the person's hit and they're flying in the air and things fall out the mouth? Or once they land on the ground and then a tooth rolls out? But for the teeth to be spread out and where the body is that odd to you? Or does it make sense? You've got to ask yourself then. And I don't know if it was answered or not. So I'll just ask the question right now. In terms of Noah's set of teeth and the teeth that were missing from his mouth but were found at the highway, was 100% of Noah's teeth either on Noah or by Noah at the scene of the highway? Yes or no? Are there any missing teeth whatsoever that weren't found at the highway? Because if not all teeth are found here, then that's a big indicator to say that could be elsewhere. It just so happens that when we talk about teeth, besides the tooth which Caleb supposedly picked up or put down, which people were a bit obsessed about, let's put that aside. What's more concerning or eye-opening is what Sarah Long, I believe, had to say at one point. It just so happens that I did manage to find it as a reference point on screen quoted by Sarah, so you can see it for yourself. But before I read it to you, in case you forgot about it, just for a bit more context, this is actually from Reddit, and it's been reposted, because originally it came from Facebook within I believe a comment section of a post, whether that be on the case discussion page or the Sofa Sleuth group. More likely you would think it's either the Army or the case discussion one, considering Amy Michelle Tuesday Horzemper, an individual that supports and seems to approve and bow down to intelligent people hate me. Says a lot about attitude and direction there, but nevertheless, Sarah Long did respond back to Amy at some point previously. And it was a long paragraph. You can read it for yourself if you want. I don't know if you want to read it right now, but let's cover a portion of it towards the bottom. Sarah Long says about the oral cavity in another spot, it would have been difficult to gather up the teeth or broken fragments of teeth and transport those items whilst moving a body and not spilling a drop of blood on anyone's vehicles or the ATV side by side. So Sarah Long is responding back to the claims and suggestions of Noah's body being taken to the highway and dropped off here. That if Noah Presgrove had died elsewhere, sustained the injuries that he did and the loose teeth as well, to gather them up in a bag of some sort and making sure that the body is present too to drop each one off here, then you could also say, well, why would the teeth, one be found bottom right corner of the screen and then the other one a bit higher up? Why be spread out, done on purpose, tossed about like the white shorts were? It seems a bit ridiculous from what Sarah Long believes, and that the traces or lack of trace of blood onto vehicles, there is such a thing as cleaning vehicles up or putting a body in a bag or getting some sheeting out and then putting a body on top so it doesn't leak everywhere. That's also a possibility. And you've also got to highlight the possibility of how much blood was actually lost and what it looked like if it was elsewhere. Because like with a watermelon or a can, if it's got a hole in and the juice leaks out quite a lot, when you then pick it up and transport it, it'll be a bit lighter, but more so there's not going to be as much leaking out, seeping, because most of that already came out earlier. So by the time you drop it off at the next drop-off point, it's just going to be a bit more dry. But the only reason why I read just a bit of this out is just so you can understand why this links onto this. It's all said by the same individual. It's just that you couldn't fit it all on one page because the bloody paragraph was so long that it required 3 pages full of, post on Reddit just to be able to document and archive it, okay? So you can see the full length conversation there, or part of it, or most of it. If you want to see the complete whole analysis and the responses from people, you'll have to go back on my channel, and it's to the thumbnail is of Sarah Long, and then there's a title below or a subheading that says wheat field. You might be wondering, what's that got to do here with the video today? Well, besides the blood factor, what Sarah Long said was, I can't imagine a bunch of drunk teenagers would have enough sense to find his lost tooth fragments in the dark in a wheat field, much less gather up teeth fragments from a field, then transport the body and teeth into a vehicle without a trace of blood and place them perfectly near to the body to stage a scene. I can't imagine these kids being able to carry that out. You know what's interesting? Is the fact that not really at any point did anyone else mention about wheat fields or the field in general. The main focus has been the highway and really only the highway, with the possibilities of the party house earlier on, the house itself. Not the entire land of the property, just the house. And for Sarah Long to mention wheat field, not just a field, but a wheat one, very specific. Why be so specific when no one else has been? Why someone like Sarah Long, who in the past mentioned about I arrived at the scene? Okay. On the day, 7, 8 a.m. onwards, supposedly, Sarah Long arrived at the scene. Yeah, the highway. No. Sarah Long meant the party house. Why would you be calling that the scene when the whole focus and the mentality of behind her thoughts and others is that it happened at the highway, the scene? Bit of a slip up there, if you think about it. And you know what else is a bit of a slip up? Is depending what perspective you take it from, but when it comes to some of the opposition and others, where they say, these teenagers, they were drunk, but they weren't that drunk. They weren't that out of it. Oh, but by the way, as for Noah Presgrove in the mindset of Sarah Long, it's kind of on Noah, his responsibility to drink, to get drunk, to go down the highway somehow, and then to get hit and die. It's his responsibility. A cold reflection by Sarah Long at one point. But then whether it be Stevie Howard or more so Brooke Bounds-Carter, who mentions about Noah Presgrove. Yeah, he was bouncing about with life after the shower, even though he was quite quiet, subdued in the shower and low energy. But as soon as he got out, he was jumping about. He was teabagging people left, right and centre, slapping people with his bells and whatnot. I don't know how wild. But yeah, suddenly full of energy out of nowhere. Oh, but by the way, Noah was drunk and he deserved, in a way, or at least the responsibility is what came with it afterwards. Well, you're either drunk or you're not. In the middle, maybe. Depends what perspective you look at it from. Oh yeah, the other party goer's drunk, really drunk. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. No, they're in the middle. Where are we at? From the footage, what we've seen, besides the question of 99.9% of the party footage, what we've looked at has been positive and showed Noah Presgrove happy. Does that mean to say that's the full picture? No. But the next question would be, 99.9%, would you say of the party footage, everyone appears somewhat sober or mildly drunk, not completely out of it? Is there any footage out there which shows partygoers completely drunk and out of it and completely out of control? I wonder. Or are they just not wanting to show that because it might make them look bad, or it might reinforce ammunition towards the social housing laws being followed up on? I want to know your thoughts below. But you can see some contradictions and attitudes shifting, but specifically talking about a wheat field. If Noah Presgrove is supposedly found at the highway, and that's where he supposedly died, and then there's other people that believe Noah Presgrove died at the party house property, but not specifically the field area, and yet Sarah Long said the wheat field. I don't know which field is what. Is that wheat over there? Maybe, maybe not. The colouring of it. Over that way, the party house behind that barn shed, if you can see. You got the fields about. So Sarah Long was giving a scenario, but a very specific one. Why would Noah's teeth be in a field, and why would drunk partygoers be trying to pick them up if it was down to Noah being found dead and dying at the highway through a certain means? Or in the eyes of the others that believe Noah was murdered at the party house, but not specifically on the field, why are we now talking about the field when no one really mentioned it except for Sarah Long? What the hell's going on there? Sometimes you can be inspired, influenced, consciously or subconsciously, hence why you may mirror an act, a word, pronunciation and whatnot. You bring something up, you talk about something because it reminds you of a thing, a person in your mind at the moment, or there's a trigger, there's a memory, and that's why you mention it. But at least to our knowledge, we've never really focused too much on the field. Well, the exception me, of course, because I try and look at all the area, the environment, the possibilities across the fieldway, across where animals may have been shot by the Ford Ranger and the drivers within, the guys, Sunday and onwards. I don't know what time that came about, that video, before or after Sarah Long's comment online, but still, Sarah Long mentioning wheat field, fragments of teeth. If that happened, if partygoers were doing that to then pick up and body, then take to the highway, why would Noah Presgrove be in the field in the first place? Even in a given scenario, why would Noah be in one of these fields? Walking about randomly, cooling off, running away? And what would have been used to take him out in the field then? What exactly? It opens up a new scenario and perspective, just like this silly screen as it likes zooming out when I tap. I don't know why it does that. Quite annoying. But I just find it rather odd how that's mentioned. So I want to know your thoughts below about this transportation of teeth. I mean, in your mindset, if Noah Presgrove was murdered elsewhere, okay, on that condition, if he was murdered elsewhere, would his teeth have been already knocked out, dislodged and loosened by then? And then by the time of being disposed of at the highway, they would have fallen out? Do you think that besides the body being dumped, teeth were purposely scattered as well, randomly? And where'd they were placed or how they dropped, would you say is natural, normal, or a little bit odd? Besides the blood, the distance between where the teeth or the tooth is found from the body, does it make sense to you? Is this how teeth would be found if it was an actual hit and run on the highway? Let me know. Moving on to the next photo, which you briefly saw earlier. This is just from a different angle, that's all. And it reads, confronting photos of police chalk outlines showed where his body marked by the white line and at least one of his teeth marked by the circle were found. This is on the side of the hard shoulder, and I believe if you used to flip the camera upwards, you'd be looking towards Terrell, just as a reference. And where that circle on the ground chalked is where one of Noah's teeth was found. I can try and zoom in there. No, I mean, I can see a little bit of a blood trace, possibly. I could be wrong, because it would have been dried up. It looks a tiny little bit tainted, red coloured within that circle. Now, a tooth itself wouldn't really contain blood, unless it had little bits of remnants of blood from the mouth, which got onto the tooth, and then the tooth rolled and landed on the floor. Sometimes if a person is punched in the face pretty hard, like what you might see in the movies, if there's already blood in the mouth or on the lip and you get punched with the saliva mixed all together, punched to the side, you could spit out blood to the side, but we don't really see any of that here, as there are no likely signs of being punched in the face. The location of the tooth, though, if Noah's body was to be kind of like in parallel as you see it on screen, would that tooth be just in front, or more so behind Noah's head, or behind Noah's feet, depending which way round he was facing, because I can't fully remember? Would a tooth end up falling in that spot or not? Because if teeth or certain items are scattered about by someone, well, it can't be Noah. It would have to be someone else. So that's why it brings back to the question of, if Noah Presgrove was caught in a hit and run, those that believe that, do they believe that the teeth were scattered by the driver, or Noah just naturally got hit by the vehicle, landed on the ground, just so happened to be perfectly lined up with the hard shoulder white line, teeth ended up in the places they did, and driver continued onwards without a second thought? What are the responses there? That's what I'm wondering. The next slide, what we have, which could, yes, second to last. It says, farther away or further away, there still is a spot of blood. The only blood found at the scene, despite the extensive injuries all over his upper body. And that's where the argument and the discussions come on in. Blood loss, lack of blood loss, where is it truly? Is it elsewhere? Was it here but absorbed within the body? Some experts may have said that and many others don't. Disagreements. But we've got to look at the location of it. So basically, kind of like a chalk, more like a dot, a marker, just a bit above it. You can see where the blood is. It might be hard when you look at it when zoomed in, but right in the centre of the screen, more of like a rose-coloured, dryish red crimson, that's Noah's blood. So obviously, this photo would have been taken very recent at the time of Noah's death, on the same day or the day afterwards, depending. I mean, it's daylight, it's bright, and if it was on the same day as Noah's death and when he was taken away eventually, you've got to try and work out the timing of it, if anyone does know. But whereabout is this really located? It says further away there is a spot of blood, but how far away exactly? Well, as you see here, this is what it looks like. So the blood spot was dozens of feet away from the body, which is opposite the cross. Right. Okay. This is one of the most important pieces. I've seen this before, but I've not questioned it enough. For some reason, the way I worded it in the past was that this blood spot was near to Noah's body, but still there was a bit of distance away. But bloody hell, when you look at the distance there, it seems rather interesting. Wow. Okay. So I don't know if I can actually measure the true distance from the spot because I don't have like a measuring stick on me right now. But it says dozens of feet away. What does dozens mean? How much does that mean? 12 feet away? I'm not good with measurements like that, unfortunately. But if you want to work it out for yourself, you can below. I'd like to work it out visually speaking. If it will allow me to zoom in first of all, just made a few little adjustments. I'm zoomed in as much as I can. We're actually further down the highway, as in we've gone down a bit south and we're looking at it diagonally, the memorial. So what you're looking at on screen right now is the spot, the area, but we're a bit further away. We're more south up the highway, still on the same side lane. If you look closely on screen, in the distance, middle of the screen, but at the top of the middle of the screen, can you see that white line? That is the memorial cross. And you know why that's a problem? Because the memorial cross is there. Noah's body is over that way. And the blood is, let me just zoom out, here. What the hell? But I'm trying to look for the other markers because when I look at the markers there, you got the white dot and then you got a fair-sized circle. In what order were these photos taken in? Because when measuring the distance, at least, I would have to compare possibly to the other angles. So just bear with me for now, because I want to make sure I get a full understanding of this. I know some people could say I'm going on and on and on, but I really need to get a good understanding of this if I'm going to say what I'm going to later, because I might need to do a demonstration as well. But you saw that vehicle parked up on the side of the road. Nothing suspicious about it, but just use it as a marker measuring point. And then, of course, the memorial over that way, the cross. I just need to go back a few slides to try and measure it up with what I'm looking at. Right, so almost in parallel, mostly in parallel, you've got this area here, this marker. This is where Noah's body was found at. And then by the side, a tooth. Below, another tooth. Right, and that's in parallel with the cross, the memorial, right? Memorial, body, in front of it. Makes sense. Right, let's compare it to the blood. That's the blood. Down here, what? What? This is dodgy as hell. Memorial cross over there. That's the memorial cross. Body of Noah over there, just before reaching that car, that vehicle. Now, I don't know if it's chalked out, because it depends what time the photo was taken and what was marked off first. When I look over that way, I can't see the marking or outline of the body. But what we do know is the outline of the marking and body was in parallel almost, in front, or more so just, in front of the cross. But that's down there. That's down that way. That's more north, down the hard shoulder. Noah's blood was found south. Back down here, what the hell is going on? Right? I originally said it was a bit odd how, okay, you got blood loss or the lack of it. Where has it gone? Well, let's focus in on the bit of blood that still remains, as you see here. It might not be enough, but something is better than nothing. The fact that it's so far away from Noah's body and in between there is absolutely nothing else in terms of like blood or splatters or being dragged along. How does blood of Noah end up here and then Noah's body ends up further down the road? What? Do people understand that? That is what we really need to focus on. and I think we'll need to do a demonstration. So you might be wondering, what do we have here? Well, this is the demonstration zone where we put it all into play and perspective. Imagine this being the highway, and this area is the hard shoulder. Now, I don't literally have a tarmac road in front, so just bear with me. I'm going to explain all the different items, the bits and bobs, what they represent, and then we'll incorporate a possible truck, semi-truck, such as this one here, and possible side-by-side vehicle if there was some kind of disposing taking place. If anything does appear a little bit blurry, I've got it on autofocus just for now because of the brightness levels. That can be adjusted later. And we got examples of people that could be caught up within it if there was a possible disposing. And whilst I might have done some kind of demonstrations in the past, I've never done anything quite like this because I'm seeing it in a completely new light and perspective. So just bear with me. As for blood, it's off to the side. But first of all, the key. This here is the memorial. I didn't have like a cross, but just imagine this as the memorial, which is a bit further back on the grassy area. Behind is the railroad track. This is the memorial white cross. And kind of in parallel to it, slightly off center, is the chalk line from here to here, where my fingers are at, in between Noah himself. This is just an example of Noah because it just happens that this person's got blood on them. And when we talk about blood, there was a lack of it, but there was still some form of it present. There was mentions of bleeding from the ear. Well, if he was bleeding from the ear, why was there no blood next to him on the ground? We didn't see any of that, unless it dried up. But if that dried up or washed away, how can blood further that way be still present? Is that because there was a higher volume of blood over there than there was at the scene of where the body was at? Why would there be a higher volume of blood elsewhere then, but still on the highway? That's what we're trying to battle with today. So I don't know which way Noah was facing. Was it this way with his head pointing north, or was it his head pointing south? Because depending where you are on the highway, such as on the left-hand side, if you were walking along, a vehicle would be coming at you from this way because of the way the US is. It'd be coming from this way. So just imagine the highway. Vehicle hits you, and then where do you go? Do you get flung to the side, flung over there, or the type of vehicle you get hit, you roll over, and then land, and that drives on? That's what you've got to take in consideration as to how a body could land on the ground and the angle of it. Just so happens that Noah is on the side of the highway, which is quite perfectly in line with the white line of the roadway. So I don't know if that raises a few eyebrows for some. But either way, whichever way Noah was facing, this way or that way, we'll just leave it like that for now. The other items of interest nearby on the hard shoulder, which need to be addressed. So this here, although it's just a block, this is to represent either the chalk mark or more so a tooth. One of the teeth there. Either behind Noah's head, or if Noah was the other way around, behind his feet. Why would a tooth, one, be present here? Exactly. There's a bit of distance, isn't there? So there's that you got to acknowledge. This marker here is another tooth, as you saw circled on the ground way. It might not be the most accurate representation, but I'm just using what I've got. So that's how it looks. Does it look normal to you? Does the positioning and the teeth that are present, does it all match up with a true hit and run? Let me know your thoughts. And furthermore, once again, as for the teeth that were still in Noah's mouth, and then the two that were on the side, was that a total set of teeth, or were there any missing tooths? Does anyone know? If there's any missing teeth which aren't at the scene, they've got to be elsewhere. And then that's what would make you think, if they're elsewhere, then that must mean that he was killed elsewhere, surely. Now, the only other detail which I've not added into the scene is because it wasn't acknowledged in the photos. And yeah, it has been maybe on other articles. And that's just to mention the chain. Now, what I have here, you probably can't quite see. Will it focus in or not? No, but the quality goes terrible. I don't know why. These are handcuffs. It's the closest I could get to like a chain, right? So what this is supposed to represent is Noah's chain, what he wore around his neck most of the time. Was it a gold or a silver one? Doesn't really matter. It was described as a broken chain. Fragments or the full piece? That's unknown of, to my knowledge. But a piece of chain was found near to Noah's body. The question is, though, why was it not mentioned in the photos what we saw, and why was it not chalked, you know, like a marker of some sort? So I'm just going to move that for now because it's a bit of an obstruction. The other thing that was present, and what we're really focusing on today, is the blood itself. Now, I can't fit everything on screen, but I can move the camera across. So if I just scoot over here, this is supposed to represent the blood, okay? You know that circular bit of blood what we saw? I don't know if we can get the shine on it or not. And where that was found was described as dozens of feet away from Noah's body over here. So over here is more north. If you used to turn the camera facing directly onwards with oncoming traffic, that would be north. Down this way, dozens of feet is where the blood of Noah was at, over here. Have you seen the distance? It could be greater. I'm just, you know, I've got a small table, right? I can move it along just a little bit more. The blood over here, where my finger is. Noah's body down here. What is going on? Why is there such a big gap from the blood to Noah's body? What happened in between? You know? Now, this is the thing. You like when you get the movies and the horror films, if a person was dragged along whilst bleeding, you would get skid marks. You don't see that. If a person got run over by a vehicle multiple times or so, there could be skid marks, tyre marks, blood imprinted on the ground where there was nothing at least described to the public knowledge. So that's what we're trying to work out. That's what I wanted to highlight. And something like this creates an uneasy feeling and leaves a bad taste in the mouth when considering for so long the possibilities of a staged hit and run. Does this indicate a staged hit and run? I might only be able to see it from so many perspectives today. If we need to do a full-on update video in the future, then I will do so. But in the moment, if I just move some items for now and try and recreate, if by some chance Noah was in a vehicle, stood up in the back and somehow fell out whilst the vehicle was still driving on, anyone inside didn't care too much. What? Head planting, head facing to the ground and rolling so many times? Would that cause all those injuries in one go? Really? How would that justify the blood over that way? That's what we've got to work out, right? If it was over here, driving along on the road specifically, and fell off and landed on the hard shoulder, colliding with the ground, blood splatters there, or a pool of blood collects here next to Noah, okay, vehicle drives on. But as we know, the actual memorial and where Noah's body was found was here. If the body landed up that way, and that's what caused the blood, then how did the body end up here? It would mean that it would have been dragged along or picked up and then placed down, which is still a form of tampering with evidence and adjusting the scene. Even if it doesn't come across the lines of Noah died literally elsewhere in a different environment and then picked and then dropped in a completely different environment, if that didn't happen, but the death did take place on the highway by a hit and run, or by an accident of Noah falling out, what, people panic and think, oh no, Noah's fallen out or somehow. So because of that, we've got to pick the body up and let's transfer it down the highway and place it here. So many feet further up north. Why? Why would you do that? You wouldn't. So what else could possibly happen? I mean, even if by some chance driving at a certain speed and Noah fell out of the vehicle, collided with the ground, caused that blood on the side, and then what, tumbles across, tumble, 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 and then eventually stop here, surely there would still be blood or some kind of skid mark or trace in this zone. But it's a void, it seems empty. In fairness, from the photos what I saw, and they are limited, we did see like a big circle somewhere, but it didn't seem to be acknowledged. What was that? Now, hopefully I've not missed out too much, but at least from the photos what I saw and the captions, you saw where the markers were. Blood over there, body down this way, big distance in between. Wouldn't there be blood along the way? I mean, I've got some like demonstration material by the side of me. If by some chance that Noah was hit by a truck, a vehicle like this, I know the size scale isn't quite the same, but you know, hit like that, you're not going to be flung over the truck because it's just too high up the cab. More likely you're going to be whacked and knocked back so far and land on the ground and skid across. Or if it's at a slight angle, it could hit you to the side and you fall that way. Or that side knocks you over there as a truck drives on. There's that. But the debris, there wasn't any debris, was there? And normally you'd associate that with a hit and run. But I think other people, maybe the opposition, was saying, well maybe the body, maybe the debris was picked up, cleaned up after, right? Or during the death of Noah. Well, if that was the case, then you could still say there was tampering with the scene. It's trying to cover up your traces or tracks. It's still covering up at the end of the day. Whether that applies to the shorts individually and or applying earlier on with any debris being cleared up from a vehicle. It's still dodgy stuff you shouldn't be doing. So there's that. If we keep the memorial marker here, if we were to recreate, let's say, Noah being dropped off, dumped, first of all, I'll just put the people in the vehicle. Whoever it is, it could be anyone. Whether this links to the side-by-side at around 5 in the morning in which a female witness going towards the casino, south towards Terrell, driving down the road this way, coming across a side-by-side at some point at around 5, coming from which way though, I don't know. If it was coming this way, it's going towards the scene of the body. If the woman was driving this way, should be on the other side of the lane passing by, and they would be passing by like this. If that was the case, it seems more likely that the side-by-side, if it's relevant to the case and relevant to the events of the time of Noah, it was going to the scene, maybe to drop Noah off, maybe. If it was leaving, basically on the same line road as the female driver, behind or in front, appeared out of nowhere, pulled out and drived on, well, they could be leaving the scene. But if they're leaving the scene, then Noah's body's fresh on the highway, right? And if that's the case, why didn't the woman see Noah's body on the side? See, I made a counterpoint saying how, depending on the timing of it all and the direction, the woman may have passed by the area where Noah's body was or would have been at. But if the timing is out or earlier, she may have passed by before the body actually was dropped off at the highway if it was a form of staging, like foul play. The exception would be if Noah's body was actually on the highway already and she drove past, why did she not see it? Why did truck drivers see it afterwards? Maybe because they're in a bigger cab, higher up, higher elevation, bigger lights, better peripheral vision and whatnot. Maybe she was driving along in a different vehicle. Not this one, I'm just using it as a prop. But driving along, going that way south, and tunnel vision, focusing on the road and not what's on the side. There's that. And if startled near or at the time of when that side-by-side may have came out of nowhere. To come out of nowhere sounds like coming off the possible dirt road, side road, from which direction, who knows? Or even the hard shoulder, pulling out of nowhere and then driving on, which would make anyone jump who was nearby, focusing on what's in front and not what's on the side. So that can distract you too. Numerous factors there. But if we tail back to driving along on the other side of the road, to then cutting over onto the wrong side, pulling onto the hard shoulder, then what do the people do exactly? I know some people will join this video late and think, what's going on here? But this is really, I mean, I'm not messing about. This is really important. You've got 2 party goers, maybe, whoever they can represent. Noah's body. These 2, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people are going to, what, drag Noah's body onto the ground and dump? Are they going to place him down gently? Are they going to throw him like that? 2 individuals, to me, to you, to me, to you. Put him over here. There we go. Have you got the teeth? I've got the teeth. Chuck him. Chuck him. There's the teeth. There you go. Put tooth there. That tooth ends up there. The other tooth, we'll put here. Scatter it. Yeah. Are you in agreement? Will that do? Does it look like a hit and run? Yes, yes. Quick. Let's get into the vehicle. Oh, as for the chain, we'll leave that there as well. And then drives on like that. And then that's how Noah's body is left. Maybe. But you know what? Despite recreating that, you know what it does not explain? Let's move south down the highway. Oh, look, there is Noah's blood. That's Noah's blood. Why is it there? Why is the body there? Why is there a distance in between? Why doesn't there seem to be any blood in between? So the next thing what I want to do, I really hope this works. This is not an art show, even though sometimes it is abstract art. Oh, sugar. Basically, this is what I used when we did the JJ Bump Ass video. You remember that time of the month? Ugh, it'll have to do. It does not stain, so don't worry. It's fine. I'm not risking anything. So just imagine that is blood in there, and it's a bit wet. If Noah was bleeding to an extent, maybe more so internally, but some of it coming out externally, surely, whether it be the ears, blunt force damage within, that extreme damage with the brain, the skull, internal bleeding, it'll find a way of leaking out some way. You've seen it before. And even the scalp torn, well, a fair bit of blood can come out there as well, right? So if you've got blood, what's going to happen? Hits the ground, boom, like that. Blood, hit the ground. If continuing to be rolling along, it could bump, 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 bump. Okay? Splatters, marks, like that. If the body was to be dragged for some reason, being transported along the highway, which would be a bit odd in a way, if it was in a straight line as well, it would look something like this. Yeah? You see? Hopefully you can. Like that. Being dragged along, and if there was any... Do you know what the interesting thing was? There was no footprints. There was no bloody footprints, were there? Right? You know, walking along. None of that. If people are joining late, this is not blood, this is paint. Okay, I don't want YouTube restricting anything. It would piss me off if it was the case. Paint. Okay, it's paint. That's all it is. Right? See, hopefully you get the idea. We didn't get any of this. There was no trace, there was no skid. All there was one patch of blood there and the body here. So is that more or less likely to be a hit and run? More or less likely for it to be staged? Transitioning back to me, I've cleaned up now, not caught red-handed, all under control there. Anyone joining late, this is because I've got a bad hair day, that's all. But yeah, in terms of what I've demonstrated and what we've literally seen through the photos, if there are any more circles elsewhere, which I'm unaware of, that's unfortunate, but there can always be an update video in the future. I'm just working with what I've got. I've looked at a range of different articles which show the same photos over and over again. Unfortunately, no mention of the chain, even though there was a chain present. Could the chain have had some blood on? Maybe. But out of any items or pieces of evidence besides Noah's body, whether it be the teeth, tooth, chain, anything else of some sort, did it contain blood on it, which landed in that spot more south for that blood patch to form? At the end of the day, if someone is killed, dies on spot, in a particular spot, they're shot, they're stabbed, they're crushed, they're hit, and they don't move much at all. They die on the spot where they were stood, go onto the floor, and then possibly bleed out. Blunt force injury, maybe through the nose, through the ears, being stabbed or shot, bursting, bleeding out on the ground as you would expect, being chopped up, stamped on, run over in a particular spot. Wherever you are, if that's where you die at, then anything that appears or comes out of the body should remain close to the spot of the body, right? If you die in a particular spot and blood ends up over that way, but not too far, you could possibly explain it as in slit across the throat, artery of some sort, burst out of blood, splatters in a direction to reach a wall, to reach a mirror, and it dribbles down. And you, where you are, you just drop dead, and then the rest bleeds out around you. If there is a gradient with the ground, the blood may travel further, but there is traces along the way, like a river. You get what I'm saying? Blood doesn't spawn here, and body doesn't just die over there. And there's nothing much else in between, like it's a void. That's how it is with Noah Presgrove. Does that reinforce a hit and run? No, not really. No. Does it reinforce a body being planted there and staged? No, not really. This is a problem. It's got to be one or the other. Could it be anything else in between? I'll just mention it now before I forget. The other possibility could be if it was staged. Noah picked up by people, dropped off at the highway, at the spot more south where that blood marker was. And then people thought, no, let's pick that body up and let's carry it more north down that way, 12 feet away on foot. Let's just dump him over there. So when placing him down, first of all, that led to a blood patch forming. Then they thought, no, we'll pick him up and we'll transport him a bit more over that way. You're already a mile away from the party house. Just by moving the body one spot and then a bit further on is pointless. You know what I'm saying? Noah's actual blood is here. Something caused it to end up there. But why is the body over that way? Why is there a big gap in between? Oh, because of a hit and run or being hit by a vehicle. I guess it depends how you're hit and how it comes about. If you're hit by a vehicle, does it instantly lead to blood splattering around? No. There is video footage I've seen where, well, in India, people have been hit by trains or catched by the side. They go flinging across, but they might not cover much distance. They might be knocked to the side. They're screwed. They're bad. Is there lots of blood? No, not always. So you've got to understand that. Oh, so that means blood inside, internal bleeding. Maybe a slightly delayed reaction, as in when blood starts seeping out or coming out of somewhere, at least around the head area, the nostrils, the nose, pushing it, the eyes, more so the ears. Blood can come out those ways. If you damage from lower down in the body and there's like internal bleeding, where does that blood go? I'll be honest, I'm not an expert, but I'm just trying to use a bit of common sense that if you've got internal bleeding higher up in areas where things can seep out of, then that will come out quicker. Other areas of the body where it might not seep out, but it could be just within the body where it's not supposed to be, and the lungs, and it like drowns you or something with your own blood within. There's that. And then blood evaporates or dries, but within. I think that's maybe what the odd expert was trying to say within this case. Even, this is the thing, this is why I'm doing the video today. A lot of people just focus in on blood loss. Oh, because of blood loss, then it must mean he died elsewhere, maybe. And others that say hit and run, well, the blood loss is because it's not outwards, it's still inside and it's just dried up, and that's it. Simple as. At the end of the day, for or against, let's just stop for a second. Let's put it on pause, the blood loss. Let's focus in on the actual blood that was present, blood that was nowhere near the body. Like I said earlier, if you die in a certain spot and then you collapse, any blood that comes out will be around or near to your body. If by some chance you're hit, slit, shot, and there's a spray, like an artery, it might cover a bit of distance onto the ground. I didn't want to do this as like a demonstration, but in other dodgy ways, like when people were talking about no, people weren't talking about bananas. I was. But let's say you've got a banana and it releases itself. Depending on the force and the momentum and all that, the discharge could cover quite a lot of distance and end up over there. And you think, bloody hell, how did that come out so fast? Why is it over there? It's just that momentum, that force, that build-up, the timing, what's within, the angle. You know, all that little calculations. You try and compare that with blood splatter. Was the blood splatter at the highway? No. Were there dribbles of blood here or there? No. I have done a video briefly on this in the past, but I heavily underestimated it, hence why I'm doing it now. In the past, for some reason, I was led to believe myself that pool, that little patch of blood, what we saw, was actually nearer, closer to Noah's body. And I was saying how, well, if the body was placed here, or he ended up dying around this spot, and he landed, or was placed, then why is blood a bit of a distance away from the body? Wouldn't there be some dribbles, marks, splatters nearby somehow? Not an individual pool of blood. What's causing that individual pool of blood? If it's from Noah's body, then why is there a distance between the two? If you get shot and it's raining and you're dying in the street and you're on a gradient, that rainwater could wash the blood away. Partial rain, or if there's no rain but you're on a gradient, that blood could trickle on down the road, down the path, and collect elsewhere. It's covered distance, but providing the excess stuff beforehand, the stream of it is still there. You can see a mark, you can see a trace that spreads out, widens, travels in a direction. In this case, we've got blood loss, yes, but the blood that is present, there's a loss of it in between from the patch to the body. Why though? And in terms of people saying there was like a staged scenario, does staging a hit and run and placing the body here explain why there was blood back that way? If I haven't mentioned it already, the only other counterpoint you could say is, well, maybe besides moving the body here, then picking it back up and then moving it further down there, that wasn't the case. It was a simple fact of the body was dropped off there, as in where you see that memorial cross. Placed here, somehow teeth placed by, near to, on purpose, maybe. And then as for that blood spot, one of the partygoers decided to get a rag or a bit of Noah's blood, soak it up, and then chuck it over there and dab it on the ground to create a bit of a blood patch. What is this? Bloody art time with Warlike Ralph. Let's get your painting and canvas out and let's have a happy little disaster. This is not Bob Ross. This is not Warlike Ralph Ross. This is reality. Not a painting session, even though I did use paint earlier on. Shh. You get what I'm saying? Blood of Noah ended up over there. Something must have caused it, but there was no items or objects at that spot where the blood was at. So was it like a rag, a bit of cloth dabbed into Noah's body to absorb the blood to then paint the road red in an area? I mean, the counterpoint what I have to Noah being placed at the highway, and not everybody is going to like this, but got to do it, in honesty, with taking in mind the distance of where that blood patch was at. You got a body, and it's got evidence on, it's got loose items on, loose teeth and anything else in between, and blood dripping or about to drip. You pick the body up, you drag it out, you carry it, you place it down, and where you place that body, everything else should fall in line in that area. I mean, honestly, if people are truly staging a hit and run, don't you think they would have taken the shoes off or made one of the shoes and threw it further over there or something? Do you think they would have perfectly lined up Noah's body in parallel to the white line? Seems a bit too perfect, like a mannequin in some way. It depends how you look at it. But still, just an act of picking up the body, chucking it to the side, we'll chuck it there, boom, that's it. Oh, no, blood loss, lacking. Oh, that's because he died elsewhere. So by the time they transported him to the highway, he didn't have much blood within him anyway, so it wasn't that messy of a job. Okay. It still doesn't explain the blood south down that way. On the hard shoulder as well. So even if that was staged, let's just put it like that. Even if somehow, with a counterpoint reinforcing more so a hit and run, Noah was walking down the highway, got hit, got clipped by a mirror somehow, by a vehicle, by a truck, whacked him, caused a bit of blood loss or a blood splatter on the ground. There's still no splatters about nearby near that blood spot, just a patch, a pool. A pool of blood is where it collects, it gathers, but it does not spread any further. A splatter can be through different means: slit, shot, artery, fast, velocity, force, angle, direction. If you had a banana and depending the technique, it dribbles out and it collects in a spot, that's like the situation with the blood. So that's what I'm trying to get at. You got God, some of these examples, so corrupt, and I'm wearing a Santa hat. Oh no, I probably should pull this down right now. Too dodgy. Okay, too dodgy. Tell me when it's all over, okay? But when you think about it, for blood to be at a certain point, and it's to do with Noah, either Noah was once there in that spot to cause that blood loss, or there was like another item of some sort. But to be hit by a vehicle, you think, what? So the blood is in line with the bloody hard shoulder road marker, and the body is as well further up. So he's been hit and then like swept or dragged along all the way up there. But there's too much distance to be moving that far forwards and momentum wise, and as well to be in a straight line from where you were hit. No, it can't just work out like that. No. So even just being dumped on the road, or more so on the side, it just doesn't explain the blood patch earlier on. Take in mind that maybe I'm not looking at it from all perspectives. I'm only doing what I can in this moment in time, okay, from what's in here. If I do think of anything else in the future, obviously I'll do a follow-up video. And of course, if anyone else has their own thoughts, you can leave a comment down below. But this is the one factor which is a major problem. Everyone focuses on blood loss, but what you should be really focusing on is the blood present, which is a big distance away from where Noah's body ended up at, some way, somehow. So hopefully this video was clear enough, and I'm working with what I have. Be sure to hit the like button, that'd be appreciated, and maybe share the video so more people get to see it, and then we'll go from there. Who knows what this will lead to, but if I was just to base it off this patch of blood, it doesn't reinforce a hit and run, no, because there's not enough splatter or debris in between. It doesn't really reinforce being staged or being dropped off at the highway either. Because if you dropped off at the highway in a certain spot, everything should be there and not over here or over that way. Oh, it's been spread out on purpose to make it look more like a hit and run, where you wouldn't have blood in parallel to the body, perfectly lined up but a distance away. More likely blood in the road, in the middle of the road, in one of the lanes, and then the body further back, or so far back, and then more so on the side, like you've been clipped, not to the side. Doesn't line up here. And as well, if they were truly staging a hit and run, don't you think they would have adjusted the shoes as well? Right? I know that's a bit of a debacle too, because I think whether it be the removal of shoes or after that, Donna Bond had seen video footage of Noah on the side of the highway without shoes on or something like that. Whether that applies with shorts on or not, I don't know, right? But at some point, the shoes were not on Noah's body. Well, that's even more dodgy, right? Oh, well, it might be the part of the process of staging something. Well, from the way Jack worded it in Partners in True Crime, that Noah only had one shoe on. But he didn't, because we've heard that he had both on, but mismatched shoes. So why would Jack in a public interview try and change it up there to try and cause more confusion? He's confused himself. Who knows? But you know what? if you was to base it off a hit and run, a true hit and run, or a fake staged hit and run, Jack saying there was only one shoe on Noah, the other shoe may have been elsewhere or in an alternative reality, on the highway, spread out, okay, could link more to, you know, being hit with force, shoes being flung off, yeah. And if it was being staged, well, they should have had that mentality at the time of when staging it all, and not just, oh, we'll just paint a little bit of blood over there. We don't know if that did happen, but something caused that blood to end up earlier, further. And that's where you've got to try and understand what came first, Noah's body or that blood spot, blood patch, the pool of blood, which is more south. Did that appear first, or did Noah? Well, Noah's after that point. So did Noah touch base with that spot somehow and then was moved on or dragged along? If you've been dragged along, like I said in that demonstration back there, you get like a patch, a pool of blood being dragged along, some scraping, some markings and more, but didn't see any of that. This is a problem. This is not good. I'll see you next time. For now, my name's Warlike Ref. Goodbye and good night.